Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You're listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grid of life. You can support the podcast and pick up some sweet Flipside swag at www.patreon.com/Noah Filipiak.
What is up, Flip-A-Ponami? Welcome to episode 116 of the Flipside podcast. We are back to doing long-form interview episodes. Excited for that. Actually got a big month of those planned for you. Do want to say, if you are not subscribed to the podcast feed itself, so in your Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, subscribe to get all the episodes. There's a ton of bonus episodes that I do. They're called 5-minute flips. And there's we did a Beyond the Battle testimony recently. There'll be more of those bonus episodes that you only can get if you're subscribed. So not trying to be cheesy with the YouTube like and subscribe, but subscribe. There's a ton of content on there that I think will be really helpful. But we are back to an official long form episode 116. Excited for that. Tell you more about Pastor Dale Dalman here in a moment. I want to give a shout out to Ryan for joining the Patreon crew, the Patreon squad. If this podcast helps you, if you want to see it sustainable, join the Patreon team. You can do that at patreon.com/Noah Filipiak. And a shout out to good old Angry Brew, and my flip side is my third favorite podcast mug. Use promo code FLIP at angrybrew.com, 5lakes.com to get 10% off your order. So today I am interviewing Pastor Dale Dalman. I have known Dale for as long as I've been in the ECC, the Covenant, as the ECCers call it, Evangelical Covenant Church denomination, which is about 5 years for me. Read you some of Dale's bio, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the interview. He has his bachelor's from Moody Bible Institute, master's from Calvin Theological Seminary. He's a retired missionary and pastor with the Evangelical Covenant Church. Married to Sheryl for 43 years, 3 married children, and 7 grandchildren. Currently serves with the Clergy on Patrol program with the Grand Rapids Police Department and is Mayor Pro Tem of the city of Rockford here in Michigan. And Dale will talk about this in the interview itself, but he was a missionary in Venezuela as that retired missionary piece. And here in Grand Rapids, he pastored a Hispanic congregation. The congregation itself was completely Spanish-speaking. Dale's a white guy like me. He's from Grand Rapids. He tells about his story there, and it's just really amazing what God did. His missionary work and knowing Spanish, and then ended up pastoring this church. There was a need there, and Dale stepped up into it within the ECC. And how God has used that to shape Dale's life and what he's doing now in his retired years, when he thought he would be, just living the retired life. Not in a bad way, man. As pastor, it's hard. Being a pastor is hard. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of needs out there. And it's good to get a break from that. And Dale has definitely put in his time. But, man, God has opened up some amazing doors in Dale's life. And so I think you're really going to be challenged and encouraged by the stuff Dale's talking about. So he has been going to the immigrant detention facility in Baldwin, Michigan, visiting immigrants, predominantly Latina immigrants, but there's from other countries as well. I say predominantly because that's Dale's, language. And I don't want to give you the wrong idea. I'm mucking things up here in my intro to this. But point is, he's been going and making these in-person visits, and God has just turned it into this ministry. NPR just did a story on Dale and his visits to the detention facility, and it is super powerful. So we have the link to the NPR story in the show notes. It's Michigan's NPR. You could look it up, Dale Dalman, Michigan NPR detention facility. What I love, it's 7 minutes long. Please go listen to it. The gospel is highlighted so clearly. Dale's like, why are you doing this? He's like, I'm just living out the teachings of Jesus in the Bible because I'm a Christian and, believe in the gospel. And this is what it looks like. What I love about Dale is he is bipartisan. He is very objective, and he also doesn't worship politics, even though he's involved in politics. And he doesn't have a problem talking about, kind of how he votes or things like. He doesn't do that in this interview. But I just love the point he makes that we need to be. It's okay to vote for your side. It's okay to support your candidate or your president or whatever. And then still, as a Bible-believing, Jesus-follower Christian, call out when there is evil happening. And these shootings in Minneapolis of protesters from ICE, and the way that immigrants are being abducted by ICE, the way they're being torn out of cars, and there's been stormed raids, on these homes. Please listen to Dale. I mean, he's on the ground. He sees it. He has experience with the Grand Rapids Police Department. He has experience with ICE because as a pastor of a Hispanic church for many years, this was before the Trump administration, before ICE has has changed in its culture and its numbers and its scope. He talks about, what ICE used to be like versus what it's like now. It is a really amazing perspective. And this will be in the show notes as well. But if you'd like to donate to what Pastor Dale is doing, the money goes towards gift cards to the families of the detainees. He goes into the waiting room at the detention center and just hands out gift cards to these families, sees what they need. He puts money on detainees' accounts and helps provide transportation. He's housing people in his home that are getting out and need a bus ticket to get to where their family lives or to another state. It is amazing. So I've known Dale 5 years, has my full trust, confidence, character, amazing guy. His Venmo is where he's accepting money now. He's hoping to turn this into something official soon. But his Venmo will be in the show notes, and it is at Dale-Dalman, and Dalman is spelled Dahlman. And so I highly encourage you to send some money over. I did. And if you want to make a difference, this is a great way you can make a difference. So, I'm so thankful that I got to talk to Dale about this. So please listen to that NPR story that's in the show notes. Listen to Dale's story and just be asking God, be praying and asking God, what is mine to do? Is it speaking up? Is it giving money? Is it going to visit, the detention center? Is it talking to whoever, like your friends? I don't know. I just pray and see that there is something in this for all of us. If you're on the left or the right politically, Dale is the guy. Pastor Dale, here we go. Episode 116, Pastor Dale Dalman, ready to launch.
Heard the sound of freedom. Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
All right, Dale, welcome to the Flip Side. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for the invite to join you.
Absolutely. Well, Dale, we've known each other for, I guess, 5 years or so that I've been in the Covenant. I don't know your full story and background, and I mean, don't give us your life story, but catch up, listeners on just kind of your story and how you ended up pastoring Spanish-speaking church, Hispanic church in Grand Rapids, and how you ended up visiting detainees in Baldwin, Michigan. I know it's a lot in one question, but where did this all start?
Well, I guess it really started way back when in my 20s when I had a encounter with Jesus Christ. It was at Bella Vista Church in Rockford. And before that, I was just a cultural Christian. Like there were a lot of us at that in West Michigan. And it kind of rocked me. That time, my parents were actively involved in short-term missions. So they invited me to go on a mission trip to Haiti. And that transformed kind of my thinking of where I was going to go, and ended up heading to Moody Bible Institute, met a visiting professor from Venezuela who was recruiting people to go back with him, and ended up got married. And then we went off to Venezuela, and we did 15 years of church planning in Venezuela. So that was great. We had a great time, great experience planning a church. We raised our kids there. And so I have a special connection to Venezuela. Thankfully, my wife and I and all our kids, we all speak Spanish. We returned to the United States in, I think, 2002. and I was pastoring again at the church that sent us off for a number of years. And then through a time of transition, was invited to help out by the late Dr. Larry Sherman, who was the director of church planning for the Covenant Church, somebody that was always reaching out, trying to meet people, especially people who are involved in church planning. Because as you know, church planning is a unique skill set, and it's not easy. And we had some great conversations, and Esperanza was going through a time of transition. And so I was invited to step in and help and ended up serving for I think about 14 years as their pastor, which is located on the northwest side of Grand Rapids, nested in First Evangelical Covenant Church. And it was at that during that congregation, a gentleman, Fernando, was attending when he was in the Grand Rapids area. But we became good friends. And then they moved out of town. And though I still had somewhat contact with them through the extended networks that you have, whenever you make a friend within the Hispanic community, you're always connected with them through family. And so at parties, and then got word in September that he was picked up by ICE. He was a truck driver. They were doing, raids at the truck scales and targeting immigrant truck drivers. And even though they all had legal paperwork, driver's license, work permit, valid CDL license, there was still a policy that we were going to detain them and put them in detention and let them figure out how they were going to get out. Because one of the things that's I learned through this is that the current policy is we will assume you're guilty, we will detain you, and you have to prove your innocence in order to get out. So when I got word that he was being held up at North Lake Detention Facility, which is located in Baldwin, I started going up and visiting him. Because before that, I knew it was a news item, but that was it. Nothing more than that for me. And when I started visiting Fernando, I got to then hear stories of other people who are detained. I got to meet families on the waiting room as they're waiting to go in. And so it just really started a snowball of involvement. I started inviting friends. Hey, if you want to go up, I'll help you meet. You can meet Fernando. It helped really well because Fernando was bilingual because he's lived in the United States for 35 years. Wow. Fluent in English. 3 adult U.S. citizen kids, grandkids. So that made it very easy for people to visit. The other cool thing about Fernando, and it's really as a reflection of what's going on inside that facility, because they're not criminals, which is important. I do prison ministry. I visit criminals. In the Michigan detention facility, there are gangs, and you got to watch your back and all the stuff that happens because you house a bunch of criminals together. At North Lake, you're housing your neighbor, father, son, wife, daughter, that were all involved in their daily lives until they were taken off the street. And so at North Lake, they start forming a community of the 75 to 100 that are in a cell block, helping one another, sharing accounts, making sure people are getting contact with family. So that contact through Fernando allowed me to have contact with other detainees. And it just started spreading as far as how we can we visit more people? Can we help more people? People hear about it. And it kind of was a little snowball rolling down the hill, and now it seems like an avalanche. And I'm getting kind of carried away with it because of just the overwhelming response of people wanting to do something.
Yeah. And we'll get to this. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but just what you just said about the overwhelming response. I think there are so many, and I use the word evangelicals on purpose, just because that's become such a political buzzword where often I'm like, I don't want to be called an evangelical because of what it has been co-opted politically to mean, though we're a part of the Evangelical Covenant Church, right. Like the historical meaning of the word evangelical It has to do with believing Jesus is, the only way is our Savior by grace, Scripture, those sorts of things. But I think there's a lot of evangelicals who are kind of afraid to act. They're like afraid to maybe get ousted or put on the outside by the tribe of political evangelicals, the Christian nationalist sort of evangelicals. But I'll say we want to do something, like we are looking for a way to help. And anyway, we'll get to that. I just want to talk through why that is, and again, and to say thank you to you. And I know you're like, I'm just doing this thing God told me to do, and now it's getting bigger, and but thank you to you, because it's, I think, giving people a place of confidence, of like, hey, I know Dale, I trust him, and he loves Jesus, and you're leading the charge, and people are. I love that. So just, man, I love that movement. I think it's a movement of the Spirit.
Right.
So we're going to circle back to that, but I want to ask you about North Lake. I think most people have never been inside a detainee detention facility. What are the conditions like inside of North Lake, and what is a detainee doing in there? Like, what are they waiting for? How long are they there? And what is a process like for a person who's in the detention center?
Right. Well, the facility that is currently the North Lake Detention Facility was a federal prison before. And so it has all the conditions of if you were going inside a federal prison, or if you have ever visited a, Michigan Department of Correction facility at Jackson or whatever, you have a front desk, you have to go through a security checkpoint, you can't take anything in with you. So that's normal. You go through doors, one door closes behind you before the next door opens. So it's a prison.
Yeah.
Thankfully, at least North Lake, which is similar to like a Michigan Department of Correction facility, has in-person visitation. So it's a large visitation room, 16 tables spread out the room. You're able to visit with your detainee or your friend. I'd rather use the word friend or neighbor. Hug them, pray with them, buy them food out of the vending machine. Visits last from a half hour to an hour and a half, depending on the amount of visitors they have. So on that side, it's very similar to the prison. They're inside. It's similar. They house two people to a room. They are locked in that room 3 times a day while they do a count to make sure that nobody has escaped. And then the doors are opened, and then they're able to have a large room where they're able to interact with one another. They do have some recreational options, TV, a little bit of limited library use, I think once a week. So so there's no freedom. It's the same routine, the same meal every day. I mean, breakfast is a slice of toast, a carton of milk, and a little container of applesauce every morning. And maybe once or twice a week, they get an egg. And people have been held. We visited a man from Syria on Monday. He's been held for 9 months in the facility. We were his first visit that he had. Wow. A week ago, I facilitated a visit of a friend with a man from Yemen. 7 months detained. We were his first visit. And so a percentage of the detainees have family with the ability to come and visit. Like my friend Fernando, he had 3 American-born daughters, lived an hour away from the facility. They were able to make visits to him every day. We have 2 people in our house today. They arrived last night. They were released from North Lake. One's from New York, and the other one's from Atlanta. So for the months that they were held, they had no family, no visitors at all the entire time that they were there. So the system is designed to destroy people's hope. And when you give up hope, you just sign the paper and say, deport me. Even though you might have a legal right to stay here, you give up. And what we're trying to do is give hope. That demonstrate that people care. We visit, we put money on their accounts. I pass out gift cards to families that are in the waiting room. And people have given me because they just want to know that you care. So that's what we're trying to do to people that are there.
I feel like I heard in the NPR story that there was like children's play, toys or equipment in there. Is there children that are like locked up in this detention facility as well?
No,
Okay.
the play area is because children can visit their parents.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think that's where she was reported. They've got some little play area toys in the corner.
Okay.
So every once in a while, I mean, it's heartbreaking when you see a mom and the 3 kids visiting their dad, but I'm glad they can visit. But it's still like, really, we needed to take away a father and a husband, so that he could try to prove that he's innocent.
Who's like working a good job as a truck driver, like keeping our economy moving,
right?
Doing jobs so often nobody else really wants to do. The evangelicalism who's all for the family and family values, when like clearly if we valued families, we would be against what's happening right now with, like you just said, fathers being taken away. I mean, it's wild. Your friend, did you say Fernando? Sorry, but Fernando, he's been here 35 years, fluent in English, like legal right to be here, has 3 kids, and we're taking up our tax dollars to detain him and to have this law enforcement out there snatching people literally from their jobs. I mean, oh man, I'm a father of 3, and I can't even imagine like my kids. I have an 8-year-old, like where'd dad go? Right? It's just like, it's about the most non-Christian thing that possible when it comes to the things that Christians, say that we value. So I don't know if you want to respond to that or not, but that's a little bit of it's my emotions.
No, and I have cried more in this last 3-4 months than I have probably cried my entire life, because while there are stories of, like my friend Fernando, after being held 4 months, a judge ordered that he needed to at least have a bond hearing or he needed to be released. They never held a bond hearing and released him. I mean, he still doesn't really know what's going to happen, but we held him for 4 months. We never gave him one hearing, and then we released him. But guess what? Everybody made money in that whole system. Mm-hmm. The bonuses that were paid for arresting him, the amount of money that was paid to house him, everybody was making money except for his family that lost a breadwinner. And in the stories, and this is what wrecks you, because this is what I'm trying to do. And by bringing other people up to visit, and they're starting to tell stories, and it's just continued to snowball. Because when you hear the stories, you are like, I don't see how anybody can show up at church on a Sunday and think what's going on with immigration is acceptable. I'll share just a couple, if that's okay. And
please. Yeah, man,
we
got
ones
time.
that have just really rocked me recently. So the week that our government removed Maduro, the president of Venezuela, through the military operation, that same week, we deported a single Venezuelan gal in her late 20s to Mexico. Before she was deported to Mexico, we transferred her from North Lake to a facility in Texas. She was held in the United States by the U.S. government 9 days without food or bathing facilities. And then we sent her to southern Mexico without documentation or money. The same time we think we care about Venezuelans.
Right.
And I was like, at so many levels, no matter, and again, she was again picked up. She came through probably under the previous administration, and I have a lot of frustration with the previous administration. A lot of frustration for all our political leaders who are unwilling to come up with a plan that makes sense. But she was picked up and basically said, everything that you did under that previous administration is worthless. And that's why we're detaining you. And that's why we're deporting you. And to deport a single Venezuelan gal who now has to figure out how in the world is she going to get safely from southern Mexico back home.
Wow.
This about the same time we were visiting, and we were visiting, observing a family, and I don't know what their nation of origin. They were visiting their daughter, who was severely autistic, maybe 18 to 20 years old. And I just was observing, and I was like in shock that she was there. I didn't really have a lot of interaction with that family. And then I was there to pick up somebody who was being released, because we're involved in, when people are released, how to get them back home. And the dad was there. And so just interacting with him and excited that his daughter was getting out. And I said, how in the world did your daughter get in North Lake? And I never got into her documentation. There must have been something going on, because he obviously was making visits. But she said she was riding a passenger in a car on the east side of the state, and she was stopped by police, and they held them until everybody in that car was detained by ICE. And when you're detained by ICE, you're put in full body shackles until you end up at wherever facility. And I'm in tears. Like, what level of cruelty and evil exists in this country that a police officer and an ICE agent would think that it's an acceptable thing? I don't care what kind of her documented status.
Right.
A severely autistic young lady.
Yeah.
That's abuse. That's evil. And it's taking place financed by the U.S. government. And when you hear these stories and these over and over, it just wrecks you. Yeah. It makes you angry. It does make me angry at the part of the church that's quiet, that thinks it's okay. I'm always struck. I'm grateful for all the people I've made. I meet, and it's generally the people within the very liberal wing of the Christian tradition. And then there's Dale, the evangelical pastor, Moody Bible graduate, and I'm glad I'm there. But it's like, why am I the only one?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't know what I think too many pastors are afraid.
Yeah.
Because they've bought the lie that we're locking up the worst of the worst, that these are criminals. I've had multiple people that have been released spend the night in our home. My wife just took two of them shopping because we want to get them some clothes before they're on their 24-hour bus trip. We're not picking up criminals. Yeah. If this was somebody who was the worst of the worst, I would be a little nervous. I'm not nervous. If I was living in, these were like, a lot of them are Venezuelans. These were my neighbors in Venezuela. And for me I can't not be involved in it, but I'm also angry at so much of the church so far that seems to just ignore it. So, I heard there was a report of that. There's a big, I want to probably careful name names, but a big prayer meeting for Venezuela for, what God's doing at work in Venezuela, which I think that's great. But how about prayer for the hundreds or probably even thousands of Venezuelans that we are arresting, detaining, and then deporting to Mexico or Ecuador. Right. And then it's up to them to figure out what they're going to do after that.
Man, I got a lot of thoughts, man. One thing I want to say about that 23-year-old girl, and I remember hearing a stat from World Relief years ago, and I've interviewed Matthew Sorens twice on my podcast about immigration, and they were very instrumental for me. And I read Welcoming the Stranger back in like
Great book.
2016 when it first came out, and I was like, whoa. Love World Relief. So shout out to them. Everyone should just go to worldrelief.org and like subscribe to all their stuff. It's very educational, lots of good advocacy stuff there. But I remember some stats about the amount of women that get raped on their immigration journey to the United States. Like, and Matthew might have brought that up in our first interview years ago. But basically, he was describing like the desperation of an immigrant. Like when you leave your home country of Venezuela or Mexico, you're not like just like, hey, again, there's exceptions to everything. But many, many, many people, one of the many misconceptions that we've been kind of brainwashed with propaganda on, but is that like people are coming here to, steal our jobs or like just to whatever. It's not like people are coming to the United States in the same way that, I don't know, maybe a listener would want to move into the like next upper ring of suburbs. Like they want to upgrade their house and go from, driving a Honda Accord to like driving a Lexus or something. He described a family where like all they had in the house was tortillas and salt. That was the only food in the house. And it was like I'm a dad of 3 kids. This was a dad with 3 kids. Like, what would you do if you are, you're the listener, and then you have the cartel around you threatening? Like, again, these are many of these stories, and I'm going too long here, but I'm thinking of that woman, and just like back to the stats Matthew shared about rape and about the things people like have to go through to pass these lands, right? To pass these dark underground places. Now she's having to go the other direction.
That's right.
as a single 23-year-old woman that knows nobody. And again, if we are Christians that say we value family values, and I do, right? And I mean, I like, and we value sexual morals, and I do. I wrote a book on it, Beyond the Battle, right? Like, then why are we okay with dropping single 23-year-olds in the middle of like a wasteland where, and Lord, protect this woman, like God forbid, but like the chances are so high that she's going to get raped or even sex trafficked, and there's so many of these things that we just that's just something that, man. All right, so I want to talk about the Bible, because you said, the anger at the church. And why aren't more evangelicals speaking out about it, like you said? And when you say liberals, just so listeners know, we're talking like liberal theology, which often does correlate with like sort of liberal politics. But liberal theology would be, churches that might be universalist or might not look at the Bible as the Word of God, or whatever it may be.
Or even don't even believe Jesus is the only way. I mean,
right, exactly. Yeah, when that's what universalists like always lead to God, sort of thing. Yeah, for sure. So what you're saying, and what I'm saying is like, we're the ones that believe in the Bible. Okay, we have the commands from God to protect the foreigner. The command from Jesus that says, if you don't. If you house the foreigner, you're housing me, and you'll enter heaven. And if you don't house the foreigner, this is Matthew 25, and he lists his other things. You're not housing me, and guess what? You're the goat, and he says you're going to hell. I mean, it's crazy.
Right.
Like, am I roughly paraphrasing that? Yes, but read the end of Matthew 25. It's crazy. We're the ones with the Bible. We stand on it. We're the denominations that say we believe the Bible, we believe the Word of God, but what I'm getting so frustrated with is like, where's our fruit? The fruit of believing in the Bible isn't to whack people on the head with it. It isn't to tell gay people how terrible they are. It's to live the way of Jesus, right? Like, it's to show the world that like God cares for people, for humans. Anyway, so it's become an idol. That's what I want to say. The politics thing, the Christian nationalism thing is an idol above the Bible, above Jesus, and pastors don't want to speak out about it because their constituency is the congregation is often voting for the Christian nationalist sort of side. And if you say anything against it, and this is one other thing I want to say about you, Dale, you are, and I want listeners to know this, you're a very unbiased person. Like, you and I will have conversations, and you'll say things. I love what you just said about the previous administration, and I said more about like why, because people just are going to hear you like, oh, Dale, he's a leftist. He's a radical left. He's a liberal. He's a Democrat. You're not. Like, we'll have conversations and I'm like, oh, look at Dale. Like, you're pushing me to stay kind of even headed about this. And you work with the Grand Rapids Police Department. You do Clergy on Patrol, and I'd love to hear more about that. But like in this polarized state we're in, it's like you have like back to Black Lives Matter. You have defund the police on this side, and you have back the blue on this side, and we just go at it like war, and it's the left versus the right. You ride around with police officers, Clergy on Patrol. I want to know more about being the mayor. What was it you texted me?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem of Rockford.
Whatever that means.
Michigan. But like you're active in politics in that sense, but you're supporting the police department. You've said things to me that are very supportive of Republicans' policies. You've said things to me that are supportive of Democrat policies. But clearly to me, you are not a partisan person. You are a Jesus person who sees humans, right? Like you see people, and some of these policies are evil. Like they're really, really evil. And man, so I want to just give you a shout out for that. I want listeners to know that. And I'm just spouting stuff right now. I have questions to come back to.
Okay.
But that, what you said about pastors not speaking out about it, I get that tension because I don't want to offend. I don't want people in my church to leave. I want them to like me. I want to do this pastorally. There comes a point, though, there has to be a tipping point where pastors go, no, like this has crossed the line. And you see it firsthand. This has crossed the line.
Right.
Because where we're at today. Yeah. What could you give us? I hit on a few things, but like let's talk about the Bible. What's the biblical theological framework you come from when it comes to, let's just take, immigrants, foreigners, refugees?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, the Bible throughout, especially the Old Testament, builds on, again, three classes of people that were always subject to being at risk, vulnerable, because they didn't have protection. A widow losing the protection of her husband, an orphan losing the protection of their parents, and the foreigner, because of the fact of just being a foreigner, not having the protection that comes from being an insider. And so, I mean, that is so clear through Scripture, and so you just can't avoid it. And then Jesus, probably the most powerful teaching, which has really rocked the world, and it seems like for some reason the church has forgotten it, is the parable of the Good Samaritan.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing a visit Monday, and there's a box you have to fill in as your relationship to the person you're visiting. And I said to the person, he said, "What do I put in that box?" I said, "Neighbor." He says, "I'm not their neighbor." I said, "You actually are their neighbor biblically." And so I'm trying to use the term, instead of, our detainees, I'm calling them neighbors. And I've got two neighbors that are spending the night with me. I mean, that's what's really driving this, that's a biblical understanding. I mean, I got great neighbors here in Rockford, and I know them and they know me, but that's not really neighbors in the biblical sense. As you know, the Good Samaritan, where the Samaritan took care of the Jew that was in need, and they were supposed to hate each other. And that's the part that is just so troubling. Okay, God, you're going to have to deal with it, because sometimes they almost feel like within the evangelical community, you almost sense hate towards the immigrant, because you might attach the word undocumented to them. And which means a lot of different things. What the current administration is doing is stripping legal protections from everybody. Mm-hmm. I mean, the elimination of TPS, which is the temporary protective status, which is a program set up by Congress to offer protection to people who are fleeing situations like Haiti or Venezuela, and for the and people who have trusted that system, which is approved by the Congress, and the current administration strips all that protection and then is able to label everybody who came in under that a criminal.
Right.
And that to me is so wrong. And it's evil, because, and then the language that uses to describe those individuals is a language to dehumanize. Because if you dehumanize somebody, you can mistreat them. But I think, go back to that thought of that Venezuelan gal that I met, and I also am visiting her sister. That's the connection I have to her. Somebody would do that to an animal here in the United States, we would probably lock them up if you would mistreat an animal in that case.
Yeah.
But we're allowing our government to mistreat and many of them are brothers and sisters in Christ.
Yeah.
The gal that I visited, I mean, she's a sister in Christ. She prayed for me at the end of our visitation. We get stories of Bible studies, church services that are being held, pastors that are detained. I mean, the immigrant community, as you know, is a very faith-filled community. The immigrant community has saved a lot of denominations because of the influx of people of faith here in the United States. And that's who we're locking up and mistreating at certain points. But I don't want to dehumanize the employees at North Lake. They are also our neighbors. They are from northern Michigan. Many of them are believers. They show compassion. They have to do a job. Now, it's not perfect, and there's I think a lot. I mean, I wish it didn't even exist that we were doing any of this. But I'm not part of. Focus all my. The problem is not North Lake. The private problem is not the private prison. I'm actually thankful that North Lake exists an hour and 15 minutes north of my house. Because if it didn't exist, what's going on with immigration would still be taking place. But they wouldn't be housed at any place where I would be able to have a ministry. They would be in Louisiana, or maybe Alcatraz Alligator, whatever it's called, down in Florida. The administration so far hasn't changed its policies. And so North Lake, for those of us here, gives us an opportunity for ministry. And my hope and prayer, there are detention facilities throughout the country. And if you're a follower of Christ and you've got some other Christ followers, find the nearest detention facility and do the same thing.
Yeah.
Go up there, figure out what the visitation system is. If you don't know how to get in, hang out at the waiting room and meet a family. And that family will get you the in. And if you can't get in, you get just an opportunity to minister, because so many families, because they're immigrants, because they're in challenging situations regarding documentation and legal status, they're desperate for people to come alongside of them to care. And the amount of abuse that's taking place of those families is horrendous. The stories we hear of people who are so desperate, they reach out, this person is supposedly a lawyer. You give me $1,000, I'll get your loved one out. Never shows up, never does anything. And what do you do if you're an immigrant family and you just got ripped off by somebody? Go to the authorities to complain about it? You can't.
Ooh, man.
And so it's just so the abuse and the evil, it just permeates everything that's going on. And I'm not saying that there aren't some individuals. If you're a violent criminal, I mean, if you have a speeding ticket, no. But we all know when we talk about who a criminal is. I mean, I speed. I'm not a criminal because I speed. I came back yesterday from skiing up north on 131. I exceeded 75 miles an hour. Now maybe this is I'm gonna have a ticket given.
Hey man, I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
So we know. I mean, I'm not one who says we shouldn't deport anybody. If you're a criminal, you should be punished. You should serve your time, and you should be deported. I'm also not an open borders guy. We need to have control of what's going on. But there are legal ways that people can be able to immigrate, whether that's through asylum or other process. And right now, all that, the legal process that people thought they were following. Again, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, we're detaining you because the philosophy is lock them up and assume they're guilty, and it's on them to prove their innocence, because you're treated worse than a criminal. I get arrested by the Rockford police today, and they take me to Kent County Jail. Within a short period of time, I don't know what it is, 24 hours, 48 hours, I will go before a judge. I'll have the opportunity to be bonded out. And the prosecutor is going to have to say to the judge, here's why we've arrested Dale, and we think why we should. That's not true if you're an immigrant. My friend was held 4 months without seeing anybody.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Dude, I was just thinking about those time spans, like thinking of the pandemic when we were all stuck inside and had to socially distance. And like, seriously, like I have long-term mental health struggles that I still struggle with from the intensity of that period of my life, just from being stuck in that way. And I can't imagine being put in a detention facility for 4 months, 8, 9 months of waiting, eating a piece of toast every day for breakfast. I assume like never going outside or very limited, access to like just being in the same space over and over again.
Not in this winter Baldwin. I mean, he can go outside in the summer, but
yeah, it's like
nobody's going outside.
-10 in Michigan right now.
Because they don't get ski pants and ski shirt and heated electric socks, what I have, to when I go out on the ski slopes.
Oh my gosh. Well, then it's like the inhumane treatment, which you've been talking about. I mean, man, just yesterday I saw a video here in Grand Rapids, which is right. So our church is in a temporary location right now because of construction on our previous rental facility. But our original location that we're moving back to next month, 1,000 feet from the building, a young man has his face in the ice, like the snowbank. His face is like smashed into the ice with 3 ice-like agents. I was one of the other groups that's now like doing ice work or whatever. And they're just like kneeing him in the back, smashing his face in the ice. He's terrified. He speaks little English. He's early 20s. He is terrified. And, you just, that one little piece, and that's happening like all over. And I've seen worse stories than that of like women just being ripped out of their cars. And it's the inhumaneness that I can't see why people can't see that. Like, and you've talked about the 9 days without food, oh my goodness, it breaks my heart. I want to go back to what you said about visiting. So, I know you know this already, Dale. So not to hurt your feelings, but I want listeners to know you're not Superman. Like there's nothing like you're a cool guy. Like I like your bobbleheads. You're a good pastor. You like baseball, but like there's nothing really special and amazing about you where like you're the commissioned by God apostle to save immigrants. You're a normal guy. Like you're a guy who loves Jesus and likes the Detroit Tigers, and like you're going and being Jesus, like the hands and feet of Christ, like we're all called to do, following the Bible. And it's not complicated. Like, because I think it can feel really complicated. Even to me, I'm like, goodness, a detention center? Like, what? Can I get in there? I think a lot of people ask, well, what if I don't speak Spanish? I'd like you to maybe address that. But you're saying people, wherever they're listening, can look up their closest detention center. And is that what they're called? Or detainee centers, something like
detention
that? Detention centers. Mm-hmm. You go and you can just visit anyone. Like, is that right? Like,
no.
Tell us how it would work if like someone's listening and says, I want to do what Dale's doing. I mean, first of all, people nearby, I don't know if if you're interested in that still, like going up with people or not, but because I know you're getting kind of saturated, but let's just say somebody that wants to do what you were saying, how does somebody get started doing this at their nearby detention facility?
Yeah, well, just going back to the Superman piece. I mean, a couple of years ago when I retired from Esperanza, my goal was, I want to just spend time with my family.
You're taking
visit
it
my
easy, man. Good job.
Enjoy outdoor sports. This wasn't the plan, but God had different plans, which is good. But no, I mean, I've had people say you can't just show up to a facility and say I want to go in and visit. That you need, I think you need a Fernando. This
Okay.
all started for me because I was in contact with Fernando, and he was detained, and so I was able to, with the help of his family, figure out how can we go in and do visits. And how do we put money on his account? And then through that, it just says snowballed and meeting. And so I would say if you're anywhere, and there are other ones even in Michigan and smaller than North Lake, but they're throughout the country. And if you don't know any immigrant families that are affected, then I would say go out there and if they have, hang out in a waiting room. There's got to be an immigrant family that's going to show up.
Yeah.
And if you are able to demonstrate care and compassion, they will let you in
I think
because
that's
they're desperate.
Can someone just, can someone just show up at the detention center and hang out in the waiting room and like talk to the people that are in the waiting room? Or would the guards type people be like suspicious of that? Like, who are you? What are you doing here?
I can't, I would say if you're hanging out a long period of time, they're probably going to get suspicious. I don't know. I mean, but you could go up there, walk, who knows? I mean, I really know, but there's ways that you could find out where a family that's being affected, because it's taking place throughout the United States. We're kind of focused on maybe the Chicago, Minnesota, Maine, but as you said, the video in Grand Rapids. There are, and so find an ally, some way to get in and find out a family that's been affected by a detention. And there's your entry point. Love that family. That's, who's ever closest to you, figure out a way to support them, and then go from there. You've got at North Lake, maybe, who knows, it varies at any given day, but roughly 1,500 people that are being held there. Maybe in a given week, there are, I don't know, I guess if we're lucky, 100 people visiting, maybe. So that means 1,400 people. And every time we're able to make a visit to a new individual, you hear the same story. You are my first visitor that I've had in 9 months. And that's the same for criminals as well that are held in. I mean, I visit 2 people that are serving anywhere from 10 to 20 years in Michigan facilities. And I've been doing this for years, these 2 individuals. I am the only person who has ever visited them. That's the part that's a little frustrating for, again, it is so biblical that is what we're supposed to do, is visit the prisoner. And so I would, and then the other thing is important to understand of this particular group, because I had somebody talked to a church, and didn't know about what was going on at North Lake, and they thought, oh, this would be a great ministry for our prison ministry. And I said, no, wait a minute. I would actually say no, because it's not the same type of person.
Right.
You're not visiting criminals. You're not visiting people who have committed crime. You're not visiting people who probably hadn't held a decent job forever. And so it's a whole different, I mean, they still need care and compassion and help, but it's just a different world. These are your neighbors. If you lived in a diverse neighborhood that either worked in the short order cook, or were a landscaper or a roofer, and now are detained. And so they're like, first time in their life ever being arrested, full shackles, locked up in a prison, first time in their life. And so it's just about, okay, how can I love my neighbor?
Yeah, man. I wonder if somebody could go to, I know in Grand Rapids, there's Hispanic resource centers, kind of all encompassing, where I wonder if someone could contact, like in their city, them to start, if they don't know anybody, if they don't have a Fernando or a Dale, to connect to see like, hey, this is what I'd like to do. Is there anyone you know of that would just like a visitor? I don't know. I'm just
Yeah,
brainstorming for
or the
people to get started.
Hispanic congregations. I mean, you got Hispanic congregations
There you
located
go.
throughout the United States. They're
Absolutely. I
pretty.
love that.
They're small. They're off the
Yep.
radar. Storefront, whatever.
Yep.
So you've got to look for. It's going to take some. And if you don't have, I mean, it was easy for me because I pastored a Hispanic congregation,
Right.
and then through God's design, and I think Fernando, as much as this family would say, it was, wrong. It was abusive. It wrecked their family financially. They're able to look at it and say it also brought blessings. I mean, their dad was a leader. He was a 55-year-old man, 35 years in the United States, bilingual, has American-born daughters and a son. 3 children. So he had contacts outside the facility. He was able to help fellow detainees reach out who didn't have the resources that he had. His daughters are actively involved in doing the same thing that we're doing of helping people connect, putting money on people's accounts. So that's what you need to start.
Yeah.
Where I think so.
All right. Before I get you out of here, I want to ask you kind of my last big question about the law. I actually thought of it when you were talking about the current administration has stripped, the legal rights that many of these immigrants had under the previous administration. And there seems, and this isn't my, I guess I'll just preface it by saying, to me, there seems to be this cavalier sort of lawlessness amongst this administration, right? That they can do whatever they want. Like they can just strip the law from people that were counting on the law, right, to be there because it was there. They can just kind of in a snap, kind of do whatever they want, which is very authoritarian. It's not democracy. It's not the way our government's supposed to work. And then you have ICE killing protesters, just shooting them and killing them. And these are protesters that aren't a threat to ICE. And it's scary, right? I'm I would go protest some of the stuff. Am I going to get shot by ICE? Because they've just been given this sort of lawless permission to be these renegades. And so I say that this is, again, me just sort of saying some things on my podcast from the evangelicals that say, and I want to get your thoughts on Romans 13. So just kind of prep yourself for that. Christians that say it's the law, Romans 13:1. God says you follow the law. Just that's very hypocritical because this administration is not following the law. I think there's a ton of misconceptions about what the law is. And I'd refer people to my most recent Matthew Soren's interview, which was right before the election. So whenever that was 2 years ago, where he just does a great job of breaking down what the law is and isn't. But you've said several times that many of these immigrants getting detained are documented people. I've heard of refugees that have legal refugee status that have been snatched out of their homes and detained. So I guess my question about the law for you, for listeners that are really don't know, there's a lot of there's just I don't want to use the word ignorance because it has a negative connotation, but there's just a lot of lack of knowledge out there, and listeners are maybe hearing things that the propaganda political machines are saying that literally aren't the law. In a nutshell, or however you want to summarize it, what would you how would you help listeners understand what's even currently on the books for immigrants, how can somebody that's documented, has papers, get detained in the way that you're saying if they're here legally? And clearly, I want to say too, those that are undocumented that are here, like the story that I shared, it's a problem of law as well because our laws are bad. And you talked about that. We don't have the right types of laws that allow people to be vetted and documented and get in for safety and the right people in and those sorts of things. So I'm not judging anyone that's here undocumented in that sense. But besides that, there's laws for people that are documented that are still getting detained and getting oppressed and getting abused. So what are those laws? So and how are you seeing kind of those laws being treated lawlessly, I guess.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to hit on. One, the treatment, and this is probably going to be maybe the one of ICE and some of the video that we're seeing that seems so troubling and so abusive. Again, I serve as a chaplain with the Grand Rapids Police Department, or through the Clergy on Patrol program, and I've seen multiple arrests on the part of Grand Rapids Police, and none of them have been violent. I mean, they just haven't. Not to the extent. And I would say under previous, as a pastoring 14 years of Hispanic congregation, I did have members of my congregation that were arrested by ICE, detained, and even deported. It was painful for the family, but it was done in a very professional way. I would get a call from the ICE agent, Pastor Dalman, Jose from your congregation has been detained. We're going to be transferring him to the Calhoun County it still is an ICE detention facility. He had a bag of clothes or his personal belongings that he wanted to make sure got back to his family. You can pick that up at the ICE office, and he'll probably be at Calhoun County in the next, let's say, 24 hours. Very professional. The family would know that that's where their loved one was. They would be able to go down and visit him, know the procedure, what was going to happen, and even through the deportation. Now, none of that is happening. It doesn't appear, where it's just you're arrested, all your documents are stripped from you, your family doesn't have any idea what's going on. It's a violent arrest, for it at least appears, in the full body shackles when you see where everybody is put in when they're transported is just, I just can't even understand that. So and I don't know if it's, I assume and hope and pray that that's still the minority of the ICE agents, that's not everyone, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say. So I'm sure in anything, there are a lot of agents that have been doing this a very long time and operate in the same professional manner that I see like the Grand Rapids Police operate. I mean, there might be every once in a while a police officer that abuses his position, authority, and power, and there's a structure to hold that person accountable. Some, it could have some improvement, but there is. That seems to be missing right now, because we all need somebody to hold us accountable. A check, because if we're left to our own devices, there's still a dark side to all of us, and I think that's what we're seeing a little bit. But the problem on the law is that the last time anything was done of any significance was 40 years ago. Ronald Reagan granted an amnesty program for farm workers in California. And so for 40 years, Congress, presidents have been unable to come up with anything that was a reasonable immigration reform. And so we would come up with these kind of patchwork programs that would be put in place by one president that really had an appearance of being the law. But as you know, the day that a new president is elected in this country, and we always seem to swing from a Republican to a Democrat to a Republican to a Democrat, generally, day one, all the executive orders from this president will be torn. And that's what's been happening for a significant period of time. And Congress has not, and the president had not worked together to say, how do we deal with people that we need, people that have lived here a long time, people that are a benefit to our economy, and how do we focus on removing the criminals? And so we pass out TPS, which I have somebody describe me as, we give people, you're in the midst of a storm. Your country, like Haiti, is melting down. And here's this umbrella that will give you some protection. And you can come into the country and you assume, okay, I got an umbrella, I got some protection, but you don't realize it's just an umbrella. And that at any given time, that umbrella can be destroyed, taken away from you, and you're left without protection. Because Congress hasn't come up with a way, okay, if you've been here under a TPS program, you've lived here for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you have not committed a crime, you have paid taxes, you're producing, we're actually going to open a pathway for you to be able to stay. And and get a U.S. citizenship. But we've been unwilling to do that with so many, and it's been both administrations, both parties, different times, never coming together to say, here's the pathway. So we'll give you something that will allow you to stay here in this country and not be subject to whoever happens to be in power at any given time. So
I just did a quick search. It says, according to the Department of Homeland Security announcements, that in Trump's current term, the ICE has hired more than 12,000 new ICE officers and agents within, well, it says within about a year, but it's from like when his term began. So it's saying before that, it was around 10,000 officers, and within the last year or the last 2 years or whatever, now there's 22,000 agents. Just kind of shocking in the sense of like the old guard versus the new, that more than double of these positions are brand new positions that have been created for this, this crackdown. And I think that's why you're seeing this culture shift from the professionalism to this scariness. I want to ask you, we'll get to the Romans 13 question to end. I've heard many people say, in fact, in that video of the guy in Grand Rapids, a truck drove by and these people were screaming out the window, like, F you, to the ICE agents. And they called them the Gestapo and Nazis. They called the ICE agents that. And I've heard that comparison often to what's happening right now to immigrants and refugees, as being using Nazi Germany, snatching Jews out of their homes, the Gestapo as a metaphor. Do you think that's a helpful comparison in any way? Is it too over the top? Like, what do you do? What are your thoughts on that comparison to what's happening right now?
Yeah, I think that's not helpful. I think it's too over the top. I think that might be downplaying in some ways the evil that really took place under Nazi Germany and Hitler.
Sure.
And I think in some ways, though, we should probably look more to the conditions that were in place before that took place. What was going on in Germany at that time? I mean, what led up to the horrors of the concentration camps and so on? And that's what I think should be concerning to us, where we start labeling certain groups of people as less than, dehumanizing. The dehumanizing of the immigrant, which was some of the dehumanizing language that is taking place towards the Jews and other groups of people. I mean, that's nothing, that's just a reflection of evil that is in this world, because this world is broken. And we have an enemy that wants to destroy all he can to destroy God's creation and destroy human beings, because every human being, as you know, is an image bearer of God and therefore has incredible worth, value. And so I think that's the part that we could focus on, is thinking of that, not, but I can also feel the frustration. I mean, when you hear the stories and you feel so powerless, unfortunately, you probably things are said that because people are angry.
Yeah.
And I try, and I'm not perfect by any shape, but when I interact with my team, when we go into North Lake, I try to say, hey, we look for ways to bless the Geo Group employees. Many of them are brothers and sisters in Christ as well. Thank them for their, what they're doing. But we have to also be willing to speak out when we hear cases of abuse and mistreatment. I think that's where we've got to be willing to that's where it seems appears we're not able to do that anymore. We're not able to, with those who within the evangelical community support the Trump administration, because what they're doing seem to be unwilling to speak out to some of the abuses.
Right.
I think you could be a supporter of the president, but still be appalled by some of the things that are happening under his administration. And you need to be a voice, because you have to put first your commitment to following Christ before political parties. So,
yeah, I think that's so accurate, and that's where that blindness and idolatry comes in with our politics, which is so frustrating. It's that, well, I support this team. You know, we got the Seahawks and the Patriots going to play this Sunday, and you're like, well, I support the Seahawks, and they're my team. And so therefore, you know, who knows? Pick the horrible thing that this player did, you know, whatever. You know, no, he's great. He's the best. They're like, yeah, but he like raped somebody. No,
right.
he's the great. He's the best. No, give him, you know, look, he scored all these. Like, there's just this blind loyalty that we've given to our political parties, our political candidates. And that's the work of Satan. Talk about like, that's right. Like, where he's gotten Christians to think that their political party is where their allegiance lies. It's like the infallible, like, instead of the infallible word of God, it's the infallible political party or the infallible administration. And man, like you said, there's got to be a way for Christians to say, yeah, support your party, support your president, whatever you want it, like, and you know your congregation, but to call out the evil, like, this is evil. And if you don't, you're not applying the Bible. So I want to read Romans 13:1. I want to get your thoughts on it, and then I'll get you out of here. So a lot of people know 13:1 because it's in these conversations. A lot of people, you know, listeners, not everybody knows it. So this is in the book of Romans, and it's within, you know, if you read Romans 12, it gives a lot of context in 13, but we don't like to do that. We just chop it off where the numbers are not part of the original Bible. They're just added in. So the verse that we take out is, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. And it goes on, but that's kind of the main verse. Listeners can go check it out on their own. What's your take on Romans 13:1, particularly when Christians will post that and basically say, you're in the country illegally, get out. This is what you deserve. Like, you're let everyone be subject, follow the law, right? So Romans 13:1, like, that's it. That's our Bible verse. It's really our Bible. You're more pastoral than me, Dale. I just like I'm not as like wise and tactful as you. So what's your genuine response to that if somebody really thinks like that's how we're to apply this verse in our current setting?
Yeah, well, I would just challenge a hypothetical. So let's suppose let's say we have a different administration, and they pass a law that says that anybody who is an evangelical believer needs to be detained and imprisoned until they can prove that they're not a threat to the government. Let's say they would pass that law.
Yeah, right.
And you saw the police force going door to door, coming after your brothers and sisters in Christ. I don't think you would haul out that verse and justify that behavior.
Right.
You would have a more nuanced understanding of, we do want government. We do have to obey laws, but there are times when the laws are abusive, and then there are times within it that government and people in power abuse their power without any sense of the rule of law. The part on what is so heartbreaking is that, and again, it's part of the mess of our system, but you have so many people who thought they were following the law. Everything that the government had asked them to do, they had complied with. But for some reason, an executive order was signed that said that we will now detain people that are within an immigration proceeding until they can prove that they're either has a legitimate claim or to prove that they're actually going to come to, because we're not detaining people who aren't showing up to their court hearings. We're detaining people who show up to their court hearing, go before the judge schedules the next step in their immigration process. They walk out of the courtroom and there are ICE agents there to arrest them because the decision has been made. We are going to imprison you until you're that next court, not because you were a threat, not because you weren't showing up. And that's the part I don't think people really understand. So we met a woman 9 years into this country, 3 American children, had been in complete compliance. After last year, all of a sudden, her check-ins were happening every month, where you have to show up at the ICE office in Grand Rapids just to show that you're here, that you haven't fled. She's at work. She gets a call from the ICE office saying, we need you to check in. On her own, leaves work, goes to check in. She's in Baldwin now for 3 months. She doesn't get a chance to say goodbye to her kids. She doesn't get to prepare for them. And she was obeying everything that the law required of her. And that's the part when people quote that verse, I don't think they understand what's really going on, or understand there are times when you don't obey the law. I mean, could you imagine? And maybe they'd use that in Nazi Germany to people that were involved in the whole thing of hiding in Jews. But if anybody would try this, okay, Romans 13, you want to come in and get my neighbor? You're the law. You get to no. There's something that's more profound that as followers of Jesus Christ we need to do and understand.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I did a blog on Romans 13:1. If any listeners want to listen to it, maybe I'll put it in the notes of this episode. But mentioned that, with the Holocaust, that was the law, right? If the law, the leader of the government says all Jews are no longer citizens, or all Jews are now considered illegal, right? Like whatever status they had in Germany, boom, in a snap, they're all illegal, and we're coming to get them. Well, to follow the law, you just gotta do what they say, right. And so you just be like, yeah, thumbs up, to the Holocaust, to the whole thing, because that was what the law was. And even with like Martin Luther King in the United States, we always have Martin Luther King Day on January 15, and it kind of drives me nuts when I see Christians, oh yeah, we're pro MLK, we're against racism. Well, his whole life was dedicated to bringing just laws, and to bring just laws, he did not follow the law, because the law was incredibly unjust. And the original law of our land was slavery, right? And where black people weren't even people, like they were 3/5 of a person. They were, so the history is not good, right? When you just blind, and you can find in those periods, and I know for sure in the United States, and I would imagine because Nazi Germany was a Christian country, like this was that people are quoting Romans 13:1 to defend slavery, to defend the Jim Crow laws against MLK. They're calling him a heretic. They're calling him, all of these things, and same in Nazi Germany. So just, that's a wild one. And I'd say read more of the Bible too. Would be another one. But Dale, I thank you. I don't want to keep you here all day. You have on your Facebook page a giving link to Venmo. Can you share here what that is? And I'll put that in the notes too, and just kind of where that money's going, what you're using it for. I'd love listeners. I think some listeners will want to contribute and help.
Yeah, that on my Facebook page, and it's the @Dale-Dalman Venmo. Hopefully we'll have something, because again, this was never my plan.
Yeah.
And it's become obvious that God has other plans that are involving a lot more people and a lot more resources that are being. And so hopefully soon we'll have a church, either fiduciary, or we'll have our own nonprofit. But that's a work in progress, as so many of these things are just works in progress of trying to figure out what do we got to do today to handle everything. So that's what
Dalman, Dalman.
Yes.
Got it. So give to Dale, and that's going to gift cards in the lobby. It's going to money on people's accounts that are in detention, right?
Yeah, it's going to buy the bus fare for the Venezuelan gal that's in southern Mexico. So we it's about $1,000 with bus fare and food, and somebody gave money to take care of that because we want to get her out of there. Still got to pray for her safety, for her to get back. She's starting her travels today.
Mm-hmm.
But or buying, buying the bus fare for the guy that's going down to Atlanta today that spent the night at our house, Venezuelan. I mean, that's
Right.
I'm just thankful. And I say to him, we might never see each other again on this life, but we're going to be together in eternity.
Amen, brother.
And God's going to make everything right. And we're going to remember this moment where God brought us together, but not the negative of it.
Yeah.
But the positive of, I shudder to think, and this is all God's economy. He's got to figure that out, of who's in heaven, who's not. I'm not, but I'm struggling with thinking that people who think this is right are going to spend. I don't want to go there, but I'm just I wrestle with this. And the other thing I want to say, the other thing that gives me, I think, hope, and this I'm glad that I'm a person of faith, is God is a God of love. I have no doubt about that. He's also a God of wrath. I mean, love doesn't make sense without the wrath part. And God will make things right. Evil will be punished, and people will be held accountable. No idea when and how, but okay, God, it's not up to me. I mean, I can speak out against it. I'll show Christ's love, but I'm also trusting you're going to make things right.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Someday.
Man. And I'll just cover your back for any listeners that just said, oh, Dale doesn't believe in salvation by grace through Christ. I mean, you're just quoting Matthew 25.
Right.
Like, people need to read the second half of Matthew 25. It's like, whoa, I wonder what fringe prophet just said that. It's Jesus.
Jesus,
God in the flesh. Right? So, and I also think of the one, and I'm this is just like rattling in the back of my mind, but he's talking to the religious leaders, and he talks about the people getting into the kingdom ahead of them. And he gives this idea that, like, you're going to be pretty surprised of who's in the kingdom, and ahead of you, right, to these religious leaders. So, man, that's real. I just want to close with, for listeners, like, this can be confusing. Maybe you're offended, but if you're on the your politics, you might be. I think the point, if anything you take away from this, I want listeners to hear: see people as humans, and see people as image bearers. Love your neighbor. The Good Samaritan that you mentioned before, I mean, again, that was breaking the law. That would be breaking the Jewish law, right? That was set up. Jews couldn't touch Samaritans like that, or a bleeding body like that. And Jesus is saying, that's what you need to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
His whole point was see people as image bearers, as humans. That transcends everything else. So make that be your first priority. And I love your analogy as if being an evangelical became illegal, right? Like, put yourself in their shoes, right? Like, and that is empathy. That's the love of Christ. And then just let God take it from there, right? So those are my final thoughts. What about you, Dale? Final thoughts for listeners.
No, I think you summed it up. I appreciate the opportunity to tell a little bit of the story. Really do.
Yeah, man.
I think that's important.
We appreciate you. I was going to say, if only you knew, like, a church who had a nonprofit that could set up an account for your stuff to get donated to, that where people could get receipts and things like that. I mean, I don't know if you know anyone like that, but I'll pray about it. All right. I'm going to end on that. We're still live here, but I'll talk to you offline.
I won't say a word.
I'll talk to you offline. Hopefully we can get something set up. But all right, everybody. Dale, thanks, man. I'll let you go here, and just thanks for what you're doing. We love you, praying for you, and just keep shining the light of Jesus.
All right, appreciate it. The same blessings, my friend.
Heard the sound of freedom. Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
And welcome back. One thing I forgot to mention in the intro, I did mention it with the interview with Dale. I'll put the World Relief website in the show notes as well. World Relief, one more thing we can do is advocate. We can write letters to our Congress people, to the presidential office. World Relief was doing this during the election, which is so great. They're so bipartisan. They're writing letters to the Kamala Harris group and the Donald Trump group during the election itself, pastoral letters, which I've signed. This is an evangelical group, part of the National Association of Evangelicals. And just a lot of what Pastor Dale shared, just doing life on life ministry biblically, loving our neighbor, loving the foreigner, not getting caught up in the polarized, well, it's either open borders or it's throw everybody out in this really inhumane, evil way. And I trust World Relief. I've been doing work with World Relief for 20 years. They are amazing. The link to the Matthew Soren's interview that I did during the election will also be in the show notes. So thanks for listening, letting yourself be stretched and challenged and hearing these voices. And yeah, just pray, like listen to the Holy Spirit and turn off your news, turn off your Facebook, and see what your next steps might be. So thank you so much for joining me on the flip side, being a part of this community. Buckle up for a great month ahead. Again, subscribe to the feed if you are not in the loop on 5-Minute Flips. There's a lot of great stuff on there for you to get caught up on. And with that, I will see you next time on the flip side.
The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak is a Beyond Ministries production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K-Lake Music. Used with permission. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.
It's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you're in or you're out. When you see them in the clouds, then you know it's going down. Raise them, raise them, raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is what your days.